Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it is legitimately story time, where I'm going to tell you my earliest musical memory. I went on Instagram, I asked you guys to just ask me questions, and I am going to answer some of them today. I swear. I promise. I swear. But somebody hit me with this question about what my earliest musical memory is. And I just thought it was a good question. And I thought it would make for some interesting talking in front of the camera. So here are my earliest musical memories. Just a memory that is literally my earliest memory that is music related, and some of my earliest memories just appreciating music. The earliest musical memory I have, which is also my earliest memory, which was confirmed by my mother at some point years ago to have occurred around when I was 2 years old, is when I was on some sort of family trip. It was my mother, father, and I can't exactly remember where it was, what we were doing. I know we were just going out somewhere. We weren't at home. And I had a toy drum with me. It might have even been one of those drums that you could like spin, and there would be sort of like things on strings that would bounce on the drum. I can't remember exactly what it was, but this drum, it was a toy drum, and I was apparently just like really good at making noise with the drum and being really obnoxious with the drum. And it just got taken away from me. And it got put up, I think, on the highest shelf of a closet where I couldn't reach it. And having that drum taken away, going crazy, wailing on that drum, and being unhappy with not being able to get back to the drum is literally my earliest memory. And I mean, there are probably all sorts of personality traits that you could extrapolate out of that would be predictive to how I am and what I'm doing today. Maybe pass it by a psychologist, see what they think. I know, for example, my mother for years used to call me Anthony. Why be quiet when I can make noise, Fantano? And that's still very much, I guess, my approach to life and my attitude. I still can't shut the hell up. I still can't stop making noise. I'm still making noise when instead I could be quiet, I guess. So having the drum taken away, toy drum, just generally being a noisy kid and growing up to be a noisy adult, that's sort of my earliest music memory. When it comes to appreciating music and caring about music and having an emotional investment in music as an art form, that came years and years and years later, around the mid-90s, when songs on the radio would really start grabbing my attention. I like pop music, I like rock music, I like hip hop music, because it was just really a mix back then. There was a lot of R&B on the radio as well. But then when I started to look for other places than the radio to listen to music, that's when I got hooked on MTV, which wasn't as much a free-form music platform as it used to be back in the 80s. There was a lot more original and planned programming on MTV than there used to be, but it was still a place that you could flip on during the day and hear some random music, see a music video, and through that I got turned on to TLC, Coolio, Dr. Dre, Boyz II Men, Rage Against the Machine, Nine Inch Nails, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nirvana. I mean, pretty much anything that you think back on in the 90s as being classic, I was seeing it on MTV as a kid during the daytime programming. Also, The Offspring, I was pretty big on after being turned on to tracks like Self-Esteem on MTV. Also, frickin' Green Day, Basket Case. That was in heavy rotation around the time that I was watching MTV. I know I said Rage Against the Machine, but Bulls on Parade, the Bulls on Parade music video had a pretty big impact on me. And another thing that had a big impact on me was just this idea of the boombox. You have to remember that this box of speakers that you could listen to tapes, later CDs on, and play the radio on was kind of a huge cultural touchstone around this time. Thanks in part to the significance it had to hip hop in the 80s, the boombox was just this really cool, relevant significant thing that was kind of essential if you wanted to be somebody who had, I guess, a bit more skin in the game and the ability to control a bit more their exploration into the world of music, because your options back then were to turn on the radio, turn on MTV, just turn on or expose yourself to something where something is programmed for you to consume. With a boombox or even a Walkman, you could play music at your own pace. You could listen to whatever radio station that you wanted. You could put a tape in and copy songs off the radio and play them back whenever you felt like it. And that's what I desired to do, not only because it seemed like a really cool thing generally whenever I would hear about boomboxes or see them in media, but there was also this really weird scene out of a kid's television show that left this gigantic mark on me, to the point where I still remember it to this day. And there used to be this live action show called Salute Your Shorts on Nickelodeon. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is how it went down. And it was a show, like a comedy show, or a bunch of kids are at summer camp. That's not important. What's important is there's a scene where two characters in the show sort of spent this subplot in an episode hijacking everyone's boom boxes on the campgrounds, or the boom boxes of all their friends. And then they like just sort of spread them throughout the room, and they set them all up, and they put tapes in all of them, and they went on to go play all the tapes on all the boom boxes at once, which would probably sound like garbage if you actually did it. But the way they portrayed it in the show was like, man, it was so loud and they were rocking out so hard, and it is whatever was playing off the tape sounded like some, cheap imitation of either thrash metal or hard rock or something like that. And they just like threw on those tapes. They were really rocking out. And as a kid, as a child, that seemed like the coolest thing. Like having a boombox, playing whatever song that you wanted to hear on a tape at the time you wanted to hear it. So having that boombox to me was my window, basically more my rudder in the ocean of music that I was being exposed to, because now I can sort of choose a direction I want to go in. I don't have to just listen to what they tell me to listen to at the time that they program it to be listened to. Now I can listen to the same song I like over and over and over. I can copy Dr. Dre's "Keep the Heads Ringing" off the radio and hear it again and again and again and again. And also, if I want to hear songs from Dr. Dre that they're not playing on the radio, if I have a Dr. Dre or a Coolio or a frickin' Rage Against the Machine tape, I can hear all of their songs again and again and again and again, which is what exactly I wanted and what exactly I just begged my mother for. And I didn't get it like the first year. I remember it took a little while for me to actually get a boombox in my possession after having asked for one. And it was a tiny little super cheap, small Sony boombox with tiny ass speakers and a little radio antenna, but I could play tapes in it. I could copy songs from the radio off of it. And to me, that just like meant the world. That was everything. So then it was, asking for and trying to collect tapes, which, I didn't have a huge tape collection of like original stuff. Some of the artists that I mentioned earlier, like Coolio and Boyz II Men and TLC and Rage Against the Machine and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and even that band Bush. I had to tape that band Bush, and Green Day and The Offspring, and basically anything that was super popular on the radio at the time. That just was catchy to me. I wanted a tape of it. But for the most part, a lot of stuff that I also like to listen to was just stuff on my blank tapes that I could copy songs from the radio on. Back in the day, I never had like a Beastie Boys tape, but I did have Beastie Boys songs from the radio on a cassette tape. A handful of years down the road, CD Discmans and more portable and I guess long-lasting headphones were sort of flooding the consumer market, but that's sort of a different era, a different time, a different moment of musical taste for me. Not really my earliest years appreciating music, but essentially, you guys can reflect on and think about what exactly are the portals through which you are being exposed to your favorite artists, how much you're listening to your favorite songs or albums, how you are listening to them, and what the points of influence are in terms of trying this song, trying this artist, trying that artist, what makes you want to listen to this person, what makes you want to listen to that person. Could be me, could be a friend, could be some other person's social media feed, a meme. That's you, and those are the through ways with which you are being exposed to music and new media that matters to you. For me, it was very much, again, it was all the local radio stations to me, which we had stations that played rock and played pop and played hip hop and just played generally top 40 stuff. One station, an independent one in my area, WCCC, was not only a station that back in the day Howard Stern had kind of got his start at, but it was one of the few independent stations that played as much metal as they did in the 90s and the 2000s. You know, there was a lot of nu metal stuff, a lot of Slipknot, System of a Down, Tool, sometimes the edgier ish that you couldn't get on other radio stations, they would play over there. And, you know, another funny thing about this process that maybe some people aren't super aware of, who may be a bit younger, is people used to call into the radio station and say, hey, can you play me this song? And sometimes they actually would play your song. You know, they'd play whatever track you wanted to actually hear. So, you know, these were the avenues that I heard the music that mattered to me as I was young through, you know, through the radio, through MTV. Big boomer energy in this video, I know. It's a bit of a trip down memory lane, but it is what it is. And these are essentially my earliest memories of caring about, of following and trying with the limited technology that I had access to explore the world of music. Of course, once I had an internet connection, even a cheap dial-up one, I was, you know, going on Napster, going on other P2P platforms and spending 30 to 45 minutes downloading one song, maybe even longer than that in some cases. And when you got the track, it was like really shitty, low bitrate, terrible quality, but it was still the song, I guess, in a way. So, of course, you know, I was happy to transition away from those more rudimentary mediums, the tape and the boombox. As much as I am nostalgic for those things looking back on them, it was a pain in the ass to have to rewind tapes. It sort of sucked to, after playing your favorite tape dozens and dozens and dozens of times, which had happened to my copy of Weird Al's Bad Hair Day, the sound was just shot. You know, the vocals were warped and the instrumentation didn't sound the same like it used to. You essentially just kind of melted your favorite tape by just probably rewinding and fast forwarding it in ways that I shouldn't have been without pressing stop first and that sort of thing. I mean, I was a kid. I didn't know how to do the shit properly or had no appreciation for that. But also just playing the tape over and over on its own wears it out. So it is what it is. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I think I have told you guys enough and aged myself enough with this whole video about my earliest musical memories. But these are what they are. You know, it was a different time. It was a different way of consuming and listening to music. And as much as I miss some of it, as much as I think back on it and thought, hey, you know, that kind of element of all of it was pretty cool, I still do like and kind of prefer the way things are today. You know, generally, I think that the consumer has a lot more control over what they are listening to and why they're listening to it. And, you know, I think that the internet and the digital age just brings such amazing convenience that there's truly and honestly no reason to want to give it up. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. Earliest musical memories. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music, memories, forever.